Here's the thing about turning 62. The Social Security Administration sends you nothing. No congratulations, no checklist, no warning label. You just become eligible for one of the most permanent financial decisions of your life. And the government's official position is essentially figure it out. And most people don't. Not really. They read one article, they call one financial planner, they hear wait until 70, and they either obey it or they don't. And then they file or they don't file, and they live with that number for the rest of their lives. What almost nobody tells you is that the decision is far more layered than the wait or file binary suggests. There are rules inside the system that most people never discover. There are coordination strategies that even experienced financial planners miss. There are scenarios where the math inverts completely, and there are traps disguised as safety nets, and safety nets disguised as traps. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 of those things. Not the standard list. Not file early if you're sick, delay if you're healthy. The 7 things that are technically true, publicly accessible, and almost universally ignored. And that could meaningfully change the numbers you're working with. This is the video I wish someone had given me before I spent weeks going through SSA publications, actuarial tables, and congressional research documents trying to understand why the advice I kept reading felt like it was missing something. Spoiler, it was missing a lot. Let me give you the frame I'll use throughout this whole video. Think of Social Security as a negotiation you're having with a system that was designed for an average person who no longer exists. The average person the system was originally modeled for had a stable marriage, a single career, a pension, and died close to the actuarial average. That person gets a fairly simple answer. Most of the people watching this video are not that person. They've had gaps in work history, divorces, multiple income sources, a spouse with a different financial profile, a family health history that changes the actuarial assumptions. The 7 things I'm going to cover today are the parts of the system that were designed for the complexity of real life, and that most people never access because nobody told them the door was there. Let's go. First thing, the 30% reduction isn't permanent in the way you think it is. You've heard this before. File at 62 instead of your full retirement age, and your monthly check is permanently reduced. If your full retirement age is 67, filing at 62 locks in a 30% reduction that follows you forever. This is true, but here's the part nobody says out loud. That 30% reduction can be partially, sometimes significantly recovered. And there are 2 official mechanisms for doing it that the Social Security Administration itself has built into the system. The first is the withdrawal. If you've been collecting for less than 12 months and you change your mind, maybe you got a new job, inherited money, or your financial picture changed, you can file Form SSA 521. Pay back every dollar you've received, and it's treated as if you never filed. The clock resets. Your benefit grows again as if you started fresh. No interest charged, no penalty. A complete do-over. The catch? You can only do this once in your lifetime. And you have to repay not just your own checks, but any benefits paid to a spouse or dependents on your record, and any Medicare premiums withheld. It has to be within 12 months. And it requires you to actually have that money sitting somewhere accessible. But let me tell you what this actually is when you understand it correctly. It's a 1-2 month interest-free loan from the government. You filed at 62, you collected, say, $2,100 a month for 10 months. That's $21,000. Then something changed. You pay the $21,000 back and file again at 62 and 10 months. Your monthly benefit goes up permanently. For the rest of your life, you collect slightly more every month because you effectively delayed your start date by 10 months. That's not a small thing. The second mechanism is the suspension. This one's different. If you've passed full retirement age, you can't do a withdrawal anymore because more than 12 months have gone by, you can suspend your benefit entirely. No payback required. Your benefit just stops. And for every month it stopped, you earn delayed retirement credits of 2/3 of 1%, which translates to 8% per year. You collect at 67, realize you don't actually need the money, suspend at 68. By 70, your benefit is 16% higher than it was when you started collecting. Most people who file early do so because they don't have options. That's legitimate. But an unknown number of people file early under pressure and then find themselves, a year later, in a better position than when they started. They don't know about the withdrawal window. They assume the decision is permanent. It doesn't have to be if you act within the window. Second thing, the earnings test isn't a punishment. The money comes back. This is the most misunderstood rule in the entire Social Security system. When you file before your full retirement age and continue working, there's an earnings limit. In 2025, that limit was $23,400. Earn more than that, and Social Security withholds $1 for every $2 you earn above the threshold. Many people hit that limit and see their benefit reduced sometimes to zero and assume they've lost that money. They haven't. A congressional research study found that almost nobody filing early who is still working understood this. Most believed the withheld money was simply gone. Only about 2 in 10 people surveyed got it right. Here's how it actually works. When you reach full retirement age 67, for most people reading this, Social Security recalculates your benefit. Every month that benefits were withheld due to the earnings test gets credited back to you in the form of a permanently higher monthly payment. The system treats you as if you had started benefits slightly later than you actually did. The actuarial reduction for early filing gets partially reversed. Say you filed at 62 and earned above the limit for 5 years. 10 months worth of benefits got withheld over that period. When you hit 67, your benefit doesn't just stay at the 62 level. It gets recalculated upward, not all the way to what you would have gotten if you'd waited until 67, but higher than the 30% reduction you started with. The withheld money is not lost. It becomes a higher payment, spread over your remaining lifetime. This changes the decision completely for people who want to file at 62, but plan to keep working. The conventional advice is, if you're working, don't file yet, because the earnings test will clip your benefit. But the earnings test doesn't clip it permanently. It clips it now and returns it later. Whether that trade is worth making depends on your age, your income, and what you expect to earn. But the framing of the earnings test will cost you money is not accurate. The more accurate framing is, the earnings test defers money to a later date and returns it in the form of a slightly higher monthly benefit for life. That's a very different equation. Third thing, if you were married for 10 years, your ex-spouse might be your most valuable asset. More than 4 in 10 Americans nearing retirement age don't know this rule exists. And yet, it's been in the Social Security rules since 1965. If you were married for at least 10 consecutive years and you are currently unmarried, you may be eligible to claim Social Security benefits based on your ex-spouse's earnings record. Not your own record. Theirs. If your ex-spouse's benefit at full retirement age is higher than yours, you can receive up to 50% of their primary insurance amount. You don't need their permission. They don't get notified. Their benefit is not reduced by a single dollar. They'll never see a flag on their account that shows you filed. You're entitled to the higher of your own benefit, or the divorced spouse benefit. If theirs is bigger, you collect theirs, period. Think about who this applies to. Someone who took years out of the workforce to raise children. Someone whose career was interrupted by caregiving, illness, or a late start. Someone who was married to a high earner for a decade or more, contributed to the household in ways that don't show up in FICA records, and then divorced. For that person, the divorced spouse rule can mean the difference between a benefit of $900 a month and a benefit of $1,700 a month. Not because they earned more, because the marriage lasted 10 years, and the rules say the contribution to that household is worth recognizing. There are conditions. Your ex must be at least 62 and eligible for benefits. If you haven't been divorced for 2 years yet, your ex must already be collecting. And if you remarry, you lose the divorced spouse eligibility unless that later marriage also ends. One more thing that almost nobody mentions. The 10-year rule doesn't require the marriage to be recent. You could have been divorced for 30 years. If the marriage lasted 10 years or more, the clock still runs. A woman who was married in her 20s, divorced in her 30s, spent the following decades building her own career. She can still look back at that marriage and ask whether her ex-spouse's record generates a higher benefit than her own. The answer is sometimes yes. And if it is, That's money she has already technically earned. The government just didn't tell her to go collect it. Fourth thing, filing at 62 can actually protect your investment portfolio. This one almost never makes it into the mainstream Social Security conversation. And when it does, people treat it like a fringe argument. It isn't. Here's the mechanics. Sequence of returns. Risk is the technical name for one of the most dangerous things that can happen in the early years of retirement. If you retire, start drawing down your investment portfolio to cover living expenses, and the market drops significantly in those first few years, you are selling assets at depressed prices to fund your life. Those shares never compound back for you. They're gone. And the damage that does to a retirement portfolio can be irreversible. The thing that protects against sequence of returns risk is guaranteed income. If you have a reliable income floor, a source of money that arrives every month regardless of what the market is doing, you stop being forced to liquidate investments at the worst possible prices. Your portfolio has time to recover. This is exactly why delaying Social Security to get a bigger check is not always the superior strategy. The bigger check argument assumes you have other reliable income to live on while you wait. For people without a pension, without significant fixed income, without a spouse still working, the investment portfolio is the bridge. And the investment portfolio is vulnerable. Now imagine the market drops 40%. It happened in 2008. It happened in 2001. And you're in your early retirement years with no guaranteed income except what your now diminished portfolio provides. If Social Security is running, you don't sell equities at the bottom to pay rent. You live on the Social Security check. Your portfolio sits, takes the hit, and recovers. The smaller Social Security benefit you locked in at 62 is functioning as insurance, not as income optimization, as protection against the specific scenario where income optimization fails because the market doesn't cooperate with your retirement timeline. Here's the second layer, which is even more counterintuitive. If you've been retired and haven't needed to tap your portfolio much, and the market collapses, you could use your Social Security income as the living expense floor and redirect any other income you have into buying equities at a discount. You're funded by a guaranteed government check. You're buying the market at 60 cents on the dollar. This isn't a crazy strategy. This is what institutional investors do during downturns. The difference is they have capital reserves they never touch for living expenses. Social Security can function as that reserve for individuals if it's running. The conventional wisdom says wait as long as possible to maximize your monthly benefit. That wisdom assumes a smooth, predictable retirement income picture. Real retirement is rarely smooth. And the faucet that's already running when the storm arrives is worth more than the larger faucet you were waiting to open. Fifth thing, the 3-year gap between 62 and Medicare is more expensive than you think, and Social Security can be the answer. Almost every conversation about filing at 62 focuses on the benefit reduction. Very few focus on the 3-year healthcare gap that exists between 62 and 65, the age when Medicare begins. Here's why that matters. When you leave employer-sponsored coverage, your options are COBRA, your spouse's plan, or the ACA marketplace. COBRA lets you stay on your employer's plan, but you're now paying the full premium, what you paid plus what your employer paid, plus a 2% administrative fee. For most people, that means a monthly cost they've never seen before. The ACA marketplace is the other main option. In 2026, with the expanded subsidies that were in place since 2021 now expired, a 62-year-old, earning above roughly $62,600 as a single filer faces full price premiums that can exceed $1,200 a month for a silver plan. That's more than $14,000 per year just for coverage. But here's the planning angle almost nobody talks about. If you manage your income carefully, and Social Security income counts toward your ACA income calculation, which is worth knowing, you can potentially keep your modified adjusted gross income below the threshold where subsidies kick in. Specifically, Roth IRA withdrawals don't count toward MAGI for ACA purposes. Neither do withdrawals from taxable brokerage accounts that are structured as return of principal. If you're drawing a combination of Social Security plus Roth, you can potentially qualify for significant premium subsidies while still having real monthly income. the Social Security check at 62 isn't just money. In this specific planning scenario, it's an income source that can be combined with low tax rate withdrawals from other accounts to create a livable retirement income while staying under ACA subsidy thresholds. The person who says, I'll just delay Social Security and live off my 401 CAC from 62 to 70, may be pulling taxable income that pushes them above the subsidy cliff while simultaneously eroding their most tax-advantaged retirement assets in the years before RMDs forced the issue anyway. That's a double hit that many people don't see coming. The 3-year bridge to Medicare is not a footnote. For people retiring at 62, it's potentially the biggest variable in the entire financial picture outside of the Social Security decision itself. And how you handle Social Security filing interacts directly with how expensive or affordable those 3 years become. Sixth thing, COLA doesn't just protect you from inflation. It compounds on whatever base you locked in. Most Social Security discussions acknowledge cost of living adjustments. Very few explain the second-order effect of COLA, and it's the thing that makes the base benefit decision far more consequential than a simple monthly payment comparison. Here's how it works. Every year, Social Security benefits are adjusted for inflation via the COLA mechanism. In 2025, that adjustment was 2.5%. In some prior years, it's been 0. In some years, like 2022, it was 8.7%. Now here's the part that matters for the 62 versus waiting decision. COLA is a percentage. Percentages applied to a larger base produce larger increases. If you filed early and locked in $2,100 a month, a 3% COLA gives you $63 more per month the following year. If you waited until 67 and your benefit is $3,000 a month, the same 3% gives you $90 more per month. Year 1, the gap is $27. Not dramatic, but that gap is permanent, and it compounds. By year 10, the person who waited has accumulated an additional COLA-driven benefit that's meaningfully higher every single month than the person who filed early, not just because of the original benefit difference, but because every year the COLA applied to a larger base and widened the gap further. Over a 2-5-year retirement, realistic COLA modeling adds something in the range of $150,000 to $200,000 in difference to the total lifetime benefit calculation between filing at 62 versus 67. Not because of the original monthly payment difference, because of the compounding effect of COLA applied to a higher base over time. Most break-even calculators don't model this properly. They either set COLA to 0, which has almost never been true for any extended period in Social Security's history, or they apply COLA uniformly without showing you the compounding divergence between a $2,100 base and a $3,000 base growing at the same rate for 25 years. The divergence is not small. It changes the break-even calculation substantially, which doesn't mean waiting is always right. It means that if you're doing the math to decide when to file, you have to run the COLA scenario with realistic inflation assumptions, not 0. And when you do, the case for waiting gets stronger for people with long life expectancy, and the case for filing early gets weaker unless one of the other conditions in this list applies to your specific situation. Now let me show you why all of this math eventually hits a wall. Seventh thing, the break-even calculation assumes you know something you don't. Here it is, the thing underneath all the other things. Every piece of Social Security analysis, the break-even at 82, the COLA compounding, the timing optimization, is built on one fundamental assumption, that you know how long you're going to live. You don't. Nobody does. And the uncomfortable truth is that this uncertainty is not just a footnote to the decision. It is the decision. Let me show you what I mean with real numbers. Take a woman I'll call Ruth. She's 6'2", in decent health, with a full retirement age benefit of $2,900 a month. Filing at 62 gives her $2,030. Waiting until 67 gives her the full $2,900. Waiting until 70 gives her $3,596. Standard break-even math says if Ruth lives past 82, she comes out ahead by waiting until 67 rather than filing at 62. If she lives past 84, waiting until 70 beats filing at 62 by more. The math favors waiting if she lives long. But here's what changes the entire picture. Adjust Ruth's assumed lifespan by 3 years in either direction, and the optimal strategy flips. If Ruth lives to 81 instead of 84, the break even between 62 and 67 nearly vanishes. The difference becomes negligible. If Ruth lives to 78, filing at 65 right in the middle outperforms filing at either 62 or 67. The strategy that maximizes Ruth's lifetime benefit is exquisitely sensitive to an assumption that is fundamentally unknowable. Add COLA back in and the picture shifts again. Add a spouse with a different benefit profile. Add the portfolio protection argument from thing 4. Add the divorced spouse benefit from thing 3 that Ruth didn't know she had. Add a market environment where guaranteed income has an unusually high option value. Now you have a decision with 7 to 10 meaningful variables, all of which interact, and one of which, how long Ruth lives, she cannot know with any precision. This is why the Social Security Administration's break-even calculator, when it still existed on their website, was used incorrectly by almost everyone who accessed it. People treated a tool designed to model one variable in isolation as a tool that answered the full question. It never did. And eventually the SSA removed it not because the math was wrong, but because the framing was consistently misleading people into thinking they had answered a multivariable problem with a single variable model. The break-even calculator was a starting point. Most people treated it as a final answer. Don't be that. Now, let me make all of this concrete. Let me show you how several of these 7 things interact in one household. Take a couple. I'll call Leonard and Carol. Leonard is 62, the higher earner, with a full retirement age benefit of $3,400 a month. Carol is 61, worked part-time for most of their marriage, and her own benefit at full retirement age is only $800 a month. They're both in reasonable health. Their combined portfolio is around $680,000. No pension. They need about $5,500 a month to live. The conventional advice: Leonard should delay until 70 to maximize his benefit, and Carol should file at her FRA for the spousal benefit. Here's what that advice misses. First, Carol's spousal benefit off Leonard's record. If she waits until her FRA is $1,700 a month, her own benefit is $800. She gets the higher number, $1,700. But she can only access that spousal benefit once Leonard has filed. If Leonard delays until 70, Carol waits too. Second, their portfolio of $680,000, drawing down at roughly $5,500 a month with zero Social Security income, will last about 10 years at that rate before they hit trouble. They'd be 72 with nearly depleted savings and just starting to collect the maximized Social Security amounts. Third, if the market drops 30% in years 4 through 6 of that drawdown, which is entirely plausible, the real portfolio depletion is much faster because they're selling at depressed prices. What if Leonard filed at 67, not 70? Carol immediately accesses her $1,700 spousal benefit. Leonard draws $3,400 instead of $3,596. The couple collects $5,100 a month from Social Security. The portfolio only needs to cover about $400 a month of additional expenses. The drawdown risk drops dramatically. And if Leonard dies first, which the actuarial tables say is more likely given he's male and slightly older, Carol steps into the survivor benefit. She's collecting Leonard's check for the rest of her life. That check is larger if Leonard waited longer. But the household also survived the years leading up to that point without destroying the portfolio. The right filing strategy for Leonard and Carol is not a single optimization of Leonard's benefit in isolation. It's a coordinated household strategy across health, portfolio risk, spousal benefit access, and survivor benefit positioning. Those are 5 interacting variables. The one number answer that most financial planning conversations produce ignores 4 of them. 3 things you can do with this. First, before you run any break-even analysis, identify which of the 7 things apply to your situation. If you have an ex-spouse with a higher earnings record, that changes the baseline benefit you're comparing against. If you have a meaningful investment portfolio and no guaranteed income outside Social Security, the portfolio protection argument applies. If your spouse has a significantly different benefit level, you're running a household optimization problem, not an individual one. The standard model only tells you something useful after you've mapped the variables specific to your life. Second, if you filed in the last 12 months and something material has changed, you got a job, you received an inheritance, your financial situation improved meaningfully, find out whether the withdrawal window is still open. Form SSA 521 exists. The one-time do-over exists. It's not advertised. Most people who file regretfully never discover it existed. Third, run your break-even analysis under 3 life expectancy assumptions. The one you'd guess for yourself, 3 years shorter, and 6 years longer. If the optimal strategy shifts every time you change the assumption, that's telling you something important. It means the margin of error on your decision is thin, and thin margins of error call for more information, not confident action. The system has more flexibility than most people realize. It also has more landmines. The difference between the people who navigate it well and the people who don't is rarely intelligence. It's almost always information the right kind at the right time applied to the actual variables of their specific life. The 7 things I covered today exist in the Social Security rulebook. They're not secrets. They're not loopholes. They're the parts of the system designed for complexity, for real marriages and real divorces and real health histories and real portfolio risk. Most people never find them. You just did. If this changed something in how you're thinking about the timing question, the next video on how to coordinate Social Security filing with your Roth conversion strategy, specifically in the years before RMDs force the issue, is worth your time. The 2 decisions interact in ways that can save you tens of thousands in taxes, and the window to optimize that interaction is narrow.